So you've got to put yourself in places where it's a little bit uncomfortable. You feel that knot in your stomach, but you're at the same time, you know that this is impossible until it's inevitable.
You mentioned about two keys that I really like. Number one, it is adding value. And number two, it is building relationship. These two keys are so important for young generations at this time in the cutting profession. So let's
Absolutely.
touch the first point. It is adding values. So we can add values in different ways, in different at different times, in different organizations. But talking about in general, can you share some examples about adding values?
Well, so again, going back to the idea of being a student of any organization that you're a part of, when you understand the organization's mission, you understand the values that the organization has, what it is it trying to accomplish from a strategic perspective, what are its key initiatives, then you can really align the work that you do to ensure that it is adding value in those spaces that make a difference. Right. So I would tell you that when I think about the work that I do in SOX, right, I work for a healthcare organization. I work for an insurance company, right? But in SOX isn't even actually required for the organization as a whole. But we view that because we're now $100 billion plus organization, right, from a revenue perspective, that we need to make sure that we've got the right processes in place that align with what for-profit corporations do, and because we want to hold ourselves to a higher standard in what what the markets, with the members and patients believe are absolutely needed and true for an organization of our size and stature. So we hold ourselves at a higher level, right? And so ultimately, the fact that being a part of this organization, having internal controls over financial reporting and making sure that our financial statements are free from material misstatement, that's a key responsibility. It's helping to achieve our mission, as an organization. So I want to be very much involved in supporting those types of activities, and I can tie the work that I do into the mission of our organization, right? And so there's never a time where I don't see the value of the work that we do in impacting organization, right? And so many times what I'll say is that I don't care if our members can't spell socks, right? They inherently believe we have strong internal controls over financial reporting, and that we don't have a bunch of misstatements and restatements, and material weaknesses in our organization. Because if we did, and we don't, but if we did, members knew about that, the first thing that I would think they would say, well, how can you take care of me when you can't take care of you? Right. So we need to have that as basic, tenets of how we operate as an organization, so that our members, our patients, they don't have to think about that. Our individual employees, that they don't worry if they're ever going to be paid. These things are really all, just taken care of. So you can focus on your core responsibilities and make the impact that we need for our members and patients.
I like it. If you cannot take care of yourself, how can you take care of me? It's a true statement there. And talking about the next point, it is build relationship. You
Mhm.
mentioned that you got a job at EY because you knew someone on the board. It's related to networking. So how can you start doing networking and also build relationship over time? It's not just one time and then I'm done. I know you, but I will get to you when I need you. That's not the way we build relationship.
Absolutely not. Right. Right. So you know what I would say is that always operate from a place of what I can do to help others to advance. Right. And not look at it as I'm building this relationship because of what I believe this relationship can do for me. I mean, I find that I've consistently gotten so much out of the things that I've done for other people that had no potential of any kind of personal return, other than my sense of pride that I've helped someone to achieve something that they wanted to, and I could contribute that in some way. So I believe that it's important, whether it's serving on a board, and it could be on a community-based board that's helping like a nonprofit. It could be a work that you do on an academic board, such as like an advisory board for a college. It could be serving on a board for a publicly traded company or a private organization. There's so many ways that you can do that kind of work so people get to see how you engage, what value again that you bring right to an organization where you don't necessarily get paid to do that. It's something that you do because of the genuine interest that you have in doing some good, or you can be involved in, say, your church if you want to be involved in that. You can be involved in your kids activities, whether it's their sporting activities. There's so many ways that you can build sense of community, right? And also within our profession, right? So I'm Cal CPA. I wouldn't be media past chairman of AICPA if I was not involved in Cal CPA, because Cal CPA, serving on their board, getting to be on AICPA council, is how that connection was made. And then individuals saw something in me, on council, and that suggested that maybe I'd be a good candidate for serving on the board. And then I took the initiative to serve as the audit and compliance committee chair of our committee while I was on the board, and that then led to being considered for vice chairman. Right. So again, doing something that you didn't have to do, but it ultimately helped you to create relationships, and then what opportunities that brought in. I would be remiss if I didn't also call out NABA, because I believe NABA is also a really big part of my journey. Right, so I'm a lifetime member, as you can see on the organization, and I've served in many capacities within NABA. Again, volunteer, honing my skills, aligning that as I was still working to add value and contribute to that organization, which I still do today, right? But it's the foundational skills that I learned around negotiating, uh, partnering with other people, focusing on the win. What can I do for you to ultimately help us create a great partnership? And then serving for my last officer role with NAPA was a national director of students, and it was literally happening around the time Enron and WorldCom was happening, right? So helping the students to understand, here's what you need to know as you try to navigate these really treacherous waters of what was going on within our profession at that time, and giving them a sense of peace of mind that this too shall pass, right? We are a strong and vibrant profession, and we will be better coming out of this, and we have been, and we've made a lot of strides. And when we focus on making a contribution to make a difference, we win. And just as with our pipeline, we're going to win the war on talent, our pipeline. And I know that we'll be successful, and we're going to have even more individuals, because they're people now, but they will be even more. And I can see it in terms of when I go to college campuses, people are very interested in learning more about what we do, about our internship programs, and how you can learn a lot of variety of skills and the impact that you make when you serve in this profession. So I know I went a lot of different places with you, but I just, you know, had to share.
I love it. I love it. I love how much you volunteer. You volunteer at so many organizations, at CPA, at NABA, at AICPA, and all those volunteer activities just contribute so much to who you are today. It's not just work, but also your personality, and I love it. Talking about CPA, I just want to give special credit for CPA. They are amazing.
Absolutely. We've had amazing leadership. Denise Framing, as our most current CEO, she is phenomenal. Uh,
Janice, I love her.
I got to say, just because I'm proud of it, that I was amongst I want to say, I think there were seven of us who ultimately were on the CEO selection committee that brought Denise in. And what an amazing win. She has been truly an amazing leader. And I'm so grateful that she selected us and that we selected her. And it's been an amazing partnership.
Yes, I keep telling Denise that she has done so many things for CPA, and
Absolutely.
CPA has been amazing since she stepped in the CEO and president position. So I'm very happy that we have her as the president and CEO of CPA. You also mentioned about immediate past chair for AICPA. I would love to know more about what you have done during the time when you were the chair of AICPA.
So I had several areas that were my priorities. So number one was looking at how do we further advance innovation within the profession. And I mean, you're seeing what we're doing as it relates to AI and like generative AI and how that will evolve how we operate as profession. But it just coincided, right, in terms of the opportunities within to look at how we do more in terms of automation, how we leverage these new technology tools to really advance our work, which I think will have a very positive impact on how younger generations coming up will view our profession. Looking at how we instill integrity into sustainability. So looking at ESG. Now, I will tell you that that focus is more international than I'll say domestic because organizations, depending on where you are in the U.S., they have a strong presence in the ESG space, which is environmental, social, and governance. For those who may not be as familiar, but we have an opportunity to really advance that in the places that we operate. Whether you are someone who wants to provide a test type services, where you are validating the accuracy of information that's being included in financial statements around and disclosures around ESG, or you're someone who wants to help an organization to prepare for that. Right, so there's a lot of opportunities that can be done in that space. Next was also looking at how do we support the next generation of professional accountants and giving them equitable opportunities to succeed. So that's really focusing on the pipeline and the National Pipeline Advisory Group project that was established during my term as chair, right? And so looking at bringing together these divergent voices around what is it going to take for us to get after addressing this pipeline issue, regulatory organizations, looking at diverse organizations, big firms, small firms, business industry. We brought a lot of voices to the table who were not all in agreement as to what the issues were around our profession, but we got them to leverage data to help really understand what are the challenges that we have. It's the interest in what we do, right? The salaries of what people are paid when you look at the immediate salaries versus longer term. When you look at the cost of education, when you look at the diversity of the profession and the opportunities that we have in that space, right? There's six highest priorities that we need to focus on, and we've done a lot of work to really one educate people around what is it, right, that we need to address to ultimately make our profession more attractive to younger professionals, but also to retain them, right? Because it's not just about those who are coming in, but how do you make sure the people who are already here stay and continue to do and add value in the spaces that they like to work. So that was also a major initiative as well. So those are the highest priorities, but I would be remiss if I didn't communicate what I view as the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the profession, as well as working with our state CPA societies, which are all across the country, in being present for their various events, whether it's a Women to Watch program or a student scholarship event or doing a technical presentation on the state of the profession for their annual meeting. I spent a lot of time going across the country and internationally to really be an advocate of our profession and who we are and what's the best of what we bring. And those were all part of the work that I was doing this past year.
Yeah, you mentioned about the next generation, the challenges that we have, and you mentioned about the salaries and cost of educations. I understand that salaries is always a hot topic. People always complain that we don't get paid enough. And and also for cost of education, that it's true that education is expensive. That now talking about 150 credits and you have to pay extra money to get extra 30 credits after 120 credits that you graduate in order to be able to get the CPA license. You can sit for the CPA exam now before obtaining 150 credits, but you need 150 credits to get the license. And I know we have a lot of discussions about 150 credits, but I would love to hear from you. What's your thoughts about 150 credits?
Well, so the first thing is that I would say is that we really want to move from an hours discussion to a competency, discussion. What do you need to have to be able to operate competently as a accounting, finance professional, and what are the number of hours that it takes to ultimately do that? Right. So it's not an hours driven conversation, but the competency to get what you need, and then what do you have to do to achieve that. Right now there's a lot of conversation going on between NASBA, AICPA, the what we call the UAA, when we're looking at like what are the goals of how we align that for both NASPA and AICPA as we go together to look for the Uniform Accounting Act, right? Of what are we requiring for people to ultimately become certified, and so the skills that we need. I just think that there has to be more focus on that element than on just, well, is it 120, is it 150? It may be something different. It may be somewhere in between, right? And most people, they don't graduate with exactly 100 or 150, 100, 120 or 150 hours, right? It's somewhere in between. But what I would look to is to say, can we focus on those competencies that really help us to be a better professional, and then align the qualifications for what you need to become certified with what that looks like. And so you're going to see more evolution of that. That's why we actually have the changes with the CPA exam to focus more on competency, right? So accounting, auditing, tax with an underpinning of technology. And then you can do a specialty in internal controls, in taxation, or again, financial reporting related activities. So it really depends on what your specialty and what the needs are of organizations in which you may operate.
I like how we update the CPA exams for BEC, that we change to different part of different options for BEC depends on how you want to choose your career. I think it's very practical for people who take the CPA exam. So people can say, hey, I want to do audit, I can take this section of BEC. I want to do tax, I can take the other section of BEC. I think that's a huge win when we make a decision to go with the updated CPA exam that way. That I think a lot of people absolutely agree with you about that, agree with the new CPA exam version.
Excellent. Very
And,
good.
you also mentioned about the state societies. And it seems that you were so busy when you were the chair of AICPA last year because you probably had to travel to all different states to talk to the state societies. So when you communicate with the state societies, what were the main topics when you communicate with them or when you spoke with them when you were the chair of AICPA?
So it would range, and my desire for the range was very intentional, because I didn't want to be kind of like a one trick pony, like only give you professional issue updates, right? I wanted to make sure that I could tailor my discussion based on the interest of what was relevant for the constituents that I was talking to. So I would talk to students, about, like, so if I was meeting with college students, I would talk about our profession and where we were going. What are the skills that I believe are really important for you to be relevant in the profession? How is that ultimately evolving? And then my principles of leadership. What are the things that I believe are table stakes for you to be successful in your career? I would then also talk about, to if I was doing a professional issues update, I would talk about the things that are impacting our profession, whether it was looking at in ESG, or looking at where were the things that we were impacting the professional kind of on a broader, in a broader way, whether it's helping organizations to thrive, looking at new pronouncements that may be impacting the profession, how we were evolving the CPA exam, looking at financial roles. So looking at the CFO of the future, and what do we want that in the skill sets for those individuals to have, but also diversity, equity, inclusion. That was also an important element as well. I would talk about things like what are the skills that we need to have in the controller or CFO type of role, and what professionals need to ultimately be successful in those spaces. But then also, if I was doing a presentation to, let's say, a regulatory body, like if I was meeting with NASPA and giving an update, I would bring some of that information back, right? Or if I was meeting with the SEC, what was that information and bringing that back? So making sure that the topics were always relevant for the broad stakeholder population, because again, I think it's more important than just, it's not just about people who are in public accounting or people who are in tax. It's really about looking at business industry as well, looking at government, looking at regulatory, type of organizations, so that we're really speaking to this broad body that we can have a positive impact with.
You touch about the topic that I just want to ask next. It is what skills that we need for the professions. Can you share some skills that we need for these accounting professions?
Certainly. So when I think about the different skills that we need in the profession, it's not just the what I kind of call the table stakes of understanding the financial accounting principles. We need all the things that you would normally study for in a CPA exam. So that technical competency never goes away, right? That's core to who we are and what we do. But then there's a lot of things on top of that that we need. So, are you able to lead? Right? Are you able to make sense of data and really help organizations to make better business decisions, based on that data? You need to be a storyteller, right? We tell stories, right? Now we tell true stories, right? We better tell true stories with the numbers of what they mean, but you can't just be someone who reports the news. You have to help make the news, help people understand here's what this data means and how that should evolve what we do, as a business because of the implications of the decisions that we make, based again on on the data, right? So we need to have that competency. We need to be strong partners. We have to be collaborators, right, to make sure that we're working at this together with other individuals. We need to make sure we have a strong, deep, strong understanding of technology and what are the different advantages that we can utilize to further our work. These are like many of the things that we need to make sure that we are incredibly focused on, in addition to those technical things, to really create the value that really represents who we are as a profession, what you can expect from individuals with our skill set to really make a difference in economies and businesses in the US, but also across the world.
Beside of those skills that you just mentioned about, you also discuss with other state societies about things that affect the profession. So can you specify those things that affect the profession?
Well, so part of it is looking at the evolution of the skills, right? That because that's also very relevant to the state CPA societies. Because while we have members who are part of the AICPA, we've got many members who are also part of state CPA societies. So how do we make sure we're positively impacting them? To the point of ESG in the U.S., you have some states who are like, we're like California is a great example. We're all in, on ESG, and we really want to make sure we've got strong standards for what are the expectations around ESG and the reporting requirements. In another state, and I won't name one, but there are other states that are like ESG is not something that we believe is relevant, and we shouldn't even be spending time on it, right? So ultimately, how do you navigate these things with when there's very divergent and broad perspectives of its significance and importance, right? But we do know that younger people who are coming into the profession, they see ESG as something that they think is going to be valuable, and it's worth that they love to be a part of. So also talking about that element, like I literally was at a college just recently where I did an hour talk on the impact study and what were the findings that came out of that, and again leveraging data, right? Because oftentimes there was a lot of assumptions about what students thought, what professionals thought, and we leveraged data to get into what do people really think, but also what does the data support, right? So it's not just about your feeling and what you think; it's about what we know, right? What is the data and the research that we've done help us to understand, and that evolved to those 6 areas that we believe are the issues we have to address for people to join our profession. So so talking about that also with the state CPA societies, and then really whatever they viewed as being kind of top of mind, for them from a regulatory perspective. If there was something that I could bring to the table, I definitely would. Whether it's from an advocacy perspective, of working with the AICPA's advocacy team and government relations team with the state society. So sometimes even just connecting the dots. And literally, always after I did a presentation, I would bring back insights to the AICPA on what was top of mind. Right? What were the things that the state CPA societies were concerned about? Because that can help them be more informed to figure out how do they work better and ultimately support state CPA societies. Because when you support state CPA societies, you're supporting the overall profession. You're supporting individuals who are in those state CPA societies who are members of, again, the AICPA as well. So it's all wins in doing that.
You mentioned about data. It will be missing such a big item if we did not mention about technology and AI in these things that could affect our professions. And I know that through a lot of my interviews, technologies, AIs are always hot topics that could affect significantly in our accounting professions. You talk to many state societies, talk to many college or high schools, what do you normally tell people when they ask you how AI or how technology could change this profession and how they can adapt to the technology age?
Well, so I'm so glad you asked that, Rosie, because I believe it's so important that we are adaptive, right? That it's not something that we shy away from, or that we, kind of put our head in the sand and act as if it's not going to occur. Right? It's happening, right? And it will evolve the work that we do. And for those who embrace it, I believe they will be ahead of the game, because having a combination of technology and like AI type of skill sets along with accounting, that is an amazing blend, right? And you can do a lot, because you can leverage the technology to help you to analyze information, to be thoughtful about what is the data telling us, and then to be able to communicate that in a way that organizations can make smarter business decisions, because you've got that background and knowledge, right? Or you can look, if you're an auditor, you can maybe test much more transactions instead of sampling, because you're leveraging automation tools to really look for anomalies, right? All these transactions are okay. Here's an anomaly, right? What does that mean? How do we like deal with that? So it can maybe allow us to be smarter, faster, improved in terms of what we do. So I talk in terms of how do you really leverage technology to advance what we do and make it more efficient, make it cheaper, right? And ultimately allowing people to really use their brains to like think about the results of that information. And that's the thing that AI cannot do, right? At least not at this time. We need individuals who are going to be able to analyze the data and help to make decisions. And AI at times it gets things wrong, right? We know that AI can hallucinate, right? If it's not present, it can make it up, right? And so that's why it's really important that we have people who can look at the information and say, okay, is this really right? Does that make sense? Are the outcomes that are being produced through leveraging AI, do they align with our expectations? And we should have that expectation of what we should anticipate seeing, right? So if we can, and I believe this is an important element as well, take those who may not be as familiar, who may be in Gen X or the boomers, right? And leverage them with the individuals who are utilizing things like a chat GPT or other types of technologies like Alteryx and other tools, who have lived and breathed that stuff, and come together, to ultimately leverage the brain power of those who are, got the experience and the, gravitas, with those who have the expertise in these technologies, and bridge and make sure that we're leveraging the benefits and knowledge of both to really further the work that we do as a profession.
Yep, it sounds like you just find all the right people and connect them together, and then you will get a great match.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We talked so much about accounting, about the professions. I just want to change the topic to a little bit something more fun, more relaxing. So, Okorie, what do you do for fun?
You know, the things that I do, I mean, so first of all, I'm a big advocate of mentorship and really supporting individuals who are coming up in the profession. That's a very important element of what I really do enjoy. I enjoy family time, with the wife and kids. And even though my kids are getting a little bit older, in terms of like this, don't always necessarily want dad around unless they may want dad's wallet, right? But they don't necessarily, and they're driving and they're doing their own things for the most part. But you feel like, hey, you develop them well, and then they grow, and they're doing what they should do. They're experimenting and learning and growing, and but they've got the principles that they learn from mom and dad. But I do enjoy that time with family. I have an investment club that I've been in for probably over 20, now almost 25 years, with a bunch of really close friends, and so I love like looking at the market, understanding what's going on, what makes it tick, looking at new companies, and so that's also a lot of fun. Reading and then just connecting with people. I'm a big advocate of just building relationships, connecting with people, and adding value to the profession. These are all the things that really help my energy, that really just create that sense of thriving for me. So I really enjoy it.
Can I ask if you are extrovert or introvert?
That's a really good question. Because so I'm going to give you, and I won't necessarily get all of this exactly right, but I believe that from a Myers Briggs perspective, I fall into the category of ISTJ, right? But I am on the cusp of E.
So you have a good mix of introvert and extrovert. That's good.
Exactly. Because there are definitely times where I'm like, you know what, just leave me with a book and let me be. And there are other times where it's like, this is, it's energetic, having that, conversation and being part of just these, different conversations. So, but I think that, everybody has those buttons, right? It's just a matter of when do you turn them on? And this is probably, closer to our close, that I really believe that you have to put yourself in uncomfortable positions, right? If you want to grow. Because if you're able to work from a place of, I always do this, this is what's familiar to me, I'm comfortable with that, you're really not growing and learning and achieving your best self. So you've got to put yourself in places where it's a little bit uncomfortable. You feel that knot in your stomach, but you're at the same time, you know that this is impossible until it's inevitable, right? And you got to get to that place of where you're going up that hill and you're pushing and you're running, and eventually maybe you get out of breath, but you take a deep breath and you push a little bit more. And the more that you do that, eventually you get on the other side. And that's where, again, the extrovert versus introvert comes into play. You put yourself in these uncomfortable places where it helps you to grow and thrive. And it's just one more thing that's in your toolkit.
But when you mention about pushing yourself in the uncomfortable zone, I agree that you will learn so much. But if you are in the position in your life that you are so busy with things around you in your life, when you go to work, it's just too difficult to put you in uncomfortable zone again when you're already in uncomfortable zone in your life. That, for example, you have kids. For example, you have newborn babies. It's very challenging, and so
Absolutely.
when you go to work, you just like, I just want to do something. I know exactly how to do it because I'm just too tired with the newborn babies. So at that period of time, you cannot put yourself in uncomfortable zone at every single aspect of your life.
Absolutely, you're spot on, and I think it's really important to recognize that there are going to be ebbs and flows in life, right? That sometimes, like in that very moment that you're mentioning, that being a engaged parent and taking care of yourself too, because when you're dealing with a newborn child and that choice in life, that that may mean that you have to kind of take a little bit of a step back or lateral space in your career, But then when you get to a better place where I've got this kind of managed, I'm ready to, like, take on new, different, more challenging things. You do that, and and maybe again you kind of got things kind of set at home that will allow you to push the accelerator, in the work environment, and you have to just kind of be okay with the the range, right? A life that, okay, I can't be all things to everyone, and I've got to make some decisions about when am I going to focus on what. And so I think that that's a really important thing, in knowing that for yourself and being okay with that, because sometimes people are not necessarily okay with, I need to be on all cylinders, and you don't have to, in nor can you really be, right? So you have to just figure out where and when those things are, and not letting yourself take your foot off the gas completely in anything, right? Because you still have to be able to be in a position to accelerate when that time comes.
I absolutely agree with you about that. You also mentioned that you love reading. So I was wondering if you could recommend some good books to our audience that could be significantly help their career.
Like, I would say, like, one of the books that we're currently reading is The Speed of Trust. It's by the Franklin Covey organization, so Stephen Covey's family. It's a really great book to read. I have this book called The Goal, which is, and the gentleman, his name's escaping me at the moment. That The Goal is by, but if you look up The Goal, it'll pop right up. And then another book that I recently read is actually by the daughter of the gentleman who wrote The Goal, which is the what is it, the Art of Flow, right? And so it's really about how you move through production. That's another interesting read as well. So I think just being someone who's thirsty for knowledge, and not just kind of going through the ropes of day to day grind, that you need to take the time to invest in you, right? Whether it's through reading or a podcast, your podcast, right? You hopefully will learn a lot by participating in sessions like this. So some of it you can definitely read on your own, but some of it you can listen, right, and just hear the words and the messages that are coming through. Individuals who have experienced a lot of different things. Some may be similar to you, maybe some that are different, but that you can ultimately grow from those learnings or opportunities that they've had in their careers.
You mentioned about podcast. My podcast, I actually learned so much from my guests. For example, today I learned so much from you, and I'm going to read the books that you just recommend. I actually read the book about, I think, the Art of Flow. That's the name of the
Yes.
book. Yes, I read that book. I really like it as well. I love reading and I love audible books because I read so slow. And so I was like, I like better if someone read it for me and I can just like do something, house chores, house cleanings, and still can listen to ebooks. That's super helpful.
Very, very good.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the interview today, Okorie. Before we end up the interview, I was wondering if you have any last tips and advice to our new generation or to new CPAs who just start this profession.
So I have these six principles, of leadership, and so I will try to go through those really quickly. And you can always check with me on LinkedIn, and I'm sure we'll have a link to this podcast, and they can link in with me, and I'm happy to engage directly as well. But here's the six. So number one, you're more than your career. So don't get so caught up in just your daily grind, and know that you are so much more than just the job. You might be a spouse, you might be a parent, you're definitely a child, right? You have someone, right? You sister or brother, you are a community leader. There's so many elements of who you are. So if you ever find yourself not in the role that you're in, that's not all who you are. You're so much more than that, right? Second thing is focus on developing your technical skills early, because at any point in time you're in a job, you're going to be learning new things. What got you there won't keep you there, right? So you have to always be learning, being a student of the organization, thinking about how do I continue to make, add value, building relationships with a broad group of people. We talked about that today, right? That you have to advance and broaden your network, and not focus on just what's in it for you, right? So keep building relationships. Then know when you're no longer working in the right place for you. It may not be that it's a bad job or a bad organization, it's just no longer where you need to be. So make the move. Don't be comfortable in just staying because it's what you know. Get out of that comfort zone and do some different things. Develop your personal brand. What are you known for? What do people know you for? Right? And if there's misalignment between what you want to be known for and what you are known for, there's probably some work to do, right? Because you got to change, do something different. And then lastly, think and work beyond the benefit of yourself. See how you can make a contribution to others because I truly, truly believe that you would get so much more out of helping someone else than focusing on what's in it for me. And I can tell you, there's been so many times where I've contributed to somebody and it's really paid immense dividends versus I was always focusing on me. So that's what I would leave the group with. And I would leave you saying thank you, for this opportunity to have this conversation with you and to connect with your audience. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I love those 6 principles. And I think I want to just write it down and just put it in front of my desk. They are amazing. I give you a lot of credits for those principles. Oh my God. But thank you so much for your time today. And I really appreciate your information and also your stories, sharing with us your CPA journey as well.
You got it. Pleasure to have been here. Thank you so much, Rosie.